Hi, welcome to day 7 of the Easter tree. Today we're going to be talking about Abraham and Isaac. If you could turn to Genesis chapter 21 through 22, that's what we're covering today. Genesis chapter 21. What a joy for Sarah to see the promises of God fulfilled. We're going to go over to verse 17. And meanwhile, here is Hagar, and she has Ishmael. Ishmael is her son. Verse 17, and God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar. So here we see with Hagar, she is now fled. She's been kicked out of the house. She has been sent out again into the wilderness, into the desert. And Abraham has given her a bag of water, 30 pounds of water. You can imagine that Abraham is torn. He has to send out his son, his beloved Ishmael, whom he has grown to love, and Hagar, the mother of his son. For Abraham, it is compassionate to send her out with what's comparable to about a 30-pound bag of water and just let them go. You know that he's just grieving over this loss because he loves Ishmael. And so here they are in the desert. Again, God is meeting her in the wilderness and providing for her. Chapter 22. Isn't that strange? Can you imagine hearing that? But you also hear the echoes of, take your son, your only son. And we'll see that again as we go forward here. It's interesting to note here, God is already foreshadowing Christ because God's only son was Christ. It's such a weird request that God is giving, yet what does Abraham do? Can you imagine how Abraham was feeling as they were approaching Mount Moriah? Abraham's trust was to be weighed in the balance against common sense, his human affections, and his lifelong ambition of his goals and what God's promised. And you see that he really is trusting God at his word that God will provide. It's also important to note here that Isaac has, with wood on his back, he's a condemned man, right? And we also see that Christ carrying the cross, that he is a condemned man. You see a lot of metaphor and symbolism here. At this point, Isaac is not a baby. Isaac is a teenager. So when it clicked in his brain what is happening, that he is indeed the sacrificial lamb, he had every strength and every ability to take down his dad and to wrestle and to rebel and to run away. But you see that he too is trusting that God will provide and obeying what his father has said that God has told him to do. So he is to be a servant sacrificed. And Isaac too is coming, trusting God, not by what he does, but what he's prepared to suffer. Have you ever experienced this kind of testing? Something that you feel like, God, it's just too much for me to bear. And surely you're not asking me to do that, but it's clear that he is. And you are having to face suffering. Then you understand how Abraham is feeling right now. Isaac at this point would have been very familiar with building an altar and the process of offering a sacrifice. It takes skill, and there is a tradition and a method to literally building an altar with stone. As he's doing this and fully trusting that God is providing, he knows the traditional ways of offering a sacrifice. So you wonder what's going on in his mind, and you wonder what's going on in Abraham's heart, and how much that must have just been so difficult to obey. But yet they by faith did. They trusted that God can take away life, and that surely God can bring forth life. Why do you think God took so long? Why do you think the angel took so long? He could have provided that a lot sooner, but he didn't, because indeed it was a test. It was a test of faith. Why did the angel of the Lord wait so long to intervene? Do you ever wish that God would more quickly intervene in your life, in your difficult circumstances? The thicket of trees where the ram is caught, it symbolizes a substitutionary sacrifice. For instance, Christ was caught on the tree as well. Substitutionary sacrifice is the exchange of one life for another. It's mentioned for the first time here. As the ram died in Isaac's place, Jesus also gave his life as a ransom for many. Sometimes the Lord uses these difficult circumstances to show us that to obey is to find new assurance through our suffering. Do you believe that God will provide what he promised? The angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, And again, by myself, because he is going to fulfill the promise. He's going to keep his word. To obey is better than sacrifice, isn't it? And aren't we glad that God has provided a substitutionary sacrifice on our behalf so that we did not have to die, but in our stead, Christ died for us so that we might live. That's that's the good news. That is the good news. Yay! Today's ornament, day 7, Abraham and Isaac. This is the picture of, whoops. So I got some wood from my backyard and I cut it and I glue gunned it and I wrapped a little twine around it. You can go to the craft store and they have those mini axes, mini tools. So I just put that on there, and that is our ornament for today. And as I showed you yesterday, the other half of my art, today we also see that Abraham, his name here, and yesterday we saw his name here, Abram to Abraham, and now the pieces are together. On one hand is Ishmael, and the other hand Isaac. And we see the ram caught in the bush here. Old Sarah holding baby Isaac. Isaac is old enough and grown teenager to be able to fight, but instead he lays there sacrificing his life to obey God. And the reason why I even have it, if you piece it together too, you see that, here is Abraham in the middle, and one side is Isaac and one side is Ishmael. You see it's half of his heart. So what God was asking Abraham to do was not easy. It was really to give him his heart. Take this time to think about this, to maybe answer some of the questions that were given, and to just sit and ponder in whatever manner encourages you and helps you to go a little bit deeper. Going for a walk, singing a song, writing a poem, writing a song, journaling, talking to a friend, maybe sharing this good news with your neighbor or your family member. Take heart. God will provide.